These studies raise a storm of questions. Are network-based life forms like fungi or slime molds capable of a form of cognition? Can we think of their behavior as intelligent? If other organisms' intelligence didn't look like ours, then how might it appear? Would we even notice it? Among biologists, opinion is divided. Traditionally, intelligence and cognition have been defined in human terms as something that requires at least a brain and more usually a mind. Cognitive science emerged from the study of humans and so naturally placed the human mind at the center of its inquiry. Without a mind, the classical examples of cognitive processes, language, logic, reasoning, recognizing oneself in a mirror, seem impossible. All require high-level mental functioning. But how do we define intelligence and cognition is a question of taste. For many, the brain-centric view is too limited. The idea that a neat line can be drawn that separates non-humans from humans with real minds and real comprehensions has been curtly dismissed by the philosopher Daniel Dennett as an archetypal myth. Brains didn't evolve their tricks from scratch, and many of their characteristics reflect more ancient processes that existed long before recognizable brains arose. Charles Darwin, writing in 1871, took a pragmatic line. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species becomes at doing the things they need to survive. It is a perspective that has been echoed by many contemporary biologists and philosophers. The Latin root of the word intelligence means to choose between. Many types of brainless organisms, plants, fungi, and slime molds included, respond to their environments in flexible ways, solve problems, and make decisions between alternative courses of action. Complex information processing is evidently not restricted to the inner workings of brains. Some use the term swarm intelligence to describe the problem-solving behavior of brainless systems. Others suggest that the behavior of these network-based life forms can be thought of as arising from minimal or basal cognition, and argue that the question we should ask is not whether an organism has cognition or not. Rather, we should assess the degree to which an organism might be cognizant. In all these views, intelligent behaviors can arise without brains. A dynamic and responsive network is all that is needed. The brain has long been thought of as a dynamic network. In 1940, the Nobel Prize-winning neurobiologist Charles Sherrington described the human brain as an enchanted loom where millions of flashing shuttles weave a dissolving pattern. Today, network neuroscience is the name given to the discipline that attempts to understand how the brain's activity emerges from the interlinked activity of millions of neurons. A single neuronal circuit within one's brain can't give rise to intelligent behavior, just as the behavior of a single termite can't give rise to the intricate architecture of a termite mound. No single neuronal circuit knows what's going on any more than a single termite knows the structure of the mound, but large numbers of neurons can build a network from which surprising phenomena can emerge. In this view, complex behaviors, including minds and the nuanced textures of lives, conscious experiences, arise out of complex networks of neurons flexibly remodeling themselves. Brains are just one such network, one way of processing information. Even in animals, there's a lot that can take place without them. Researchers at Tufts University have illustrated this in striking experiments using flatworms. Flatworms are well-studied models of organisms because of their ability to regenerate. If the head of a flatworm is cut off, it sprouts another head, brain and all. Flatworms can also be trained. The researchers wondered whether, if they trained a flatworm to remember features of its environment and then cut off its head, it would retain the memory when it had grown a new head and brain. Remarkably, the answer is yes. The flatworm's memory appeared to reside in a part of their body outside the brain. These experiments suggest that even within the body of brain-dependent animals, the flexible networks that underpin complex behaviors need not be limited to a small region inside the head. There are other examples. Most nerves in octopuses are not found in the brain, for instance, but are distributed throughout their bodies. A large number are found in the tentacles, which can explore and taste their surroundings without involving the brain. Even when amputated, tentacles are able to reach and grasp. Many types of organisms, then, have evolved flexible networks to help solve the problems that life presents. Mycelial organisms appear to be some of the first to do so. In 2017, researchers at the Swedish Royal Museum of Natural History published a report in which they described fossilized mycelium preserved in the fractures of ancient lava flows. The fossils show branching filaments that touch and entangle each other. The tangled network they form, the dimensions of the hyphae, the dimensions of spore-like structures, and the pattern of its growth all closely remember modern-day fungal mycelium. It is an extraordinary discovery because the fossils date from 2.4 billion years ago, more than 1 billion years before fungi were thought to have branched off the tree of life. There is no way to identify the organism with certainty, but whether or not it was a true fungus, it clearly had a mycelial habit. It is a finding that makes mycelium one of the earliest known gestures towards complex multicellular life, an original tangle, one of the first living networks. Remarkably unchanged, mycelium has persisted for more than half of the 4 billion years of life's history, through countless cataclysms and catastrophic global transformations. Barbara McClintock, who won the Nobel Prize for her work on mice genetics, described plants as extraordinary, beyond our wildest expectations. Not because they have found ways to do what humans can do, but because a life lived rooted to one spot has coaxed them to evolve countless ingenious mechanisms to deal with challenges that animals might avoid by simply running away. We could say that the same of fungi. Mycelium is one such ingenious solution, a brilliant reply to some of life's most basic challenges. Mycelial fungi don't do as we do and contain flexible networks that ceaselessly remodel themselves. They are flexible networks that ceaselessly remodel themselves. McClintock emphasizes how important it is to acquire a feeling for the organism, to develop the patience to hear what the material has to say to you. When it comes to fungi, do we really stand a chance? Mycelial lives are so other, their possibilities so strange, but perhaps they aren't quite so remote as they seem at first glance. Many traditional cultures understand life to be an entangled whole. Today, the idea that all things are interconnected has been so well used that it has collapsed into a cliché. The idea of the web of life underpins modern scientific conceptions of nature. The school of systems theory, which arose during the 20th century, understands all systems, from traffic flows to governments to ecosystems, to be dynamic networks of interaction. The field of artificial intelligence solves problems using artificial neuron networks. Many aspects of human life are continuous with the digital networks of the internet. Network neuroscience invites us to understand ourselves as dynamic networks. Like a well-exercised muscle, network has hypertrophied into a master concept. It's hard to think of a subject that networks aren't used to make sense of. Yet we still struggle to make sense of mycelium. I asked Body what aspects of mycelial lives remain mysterious. "Oh, that's a good question," she faltered. "I really don't know. There are just so many things. How do mycelial fungi work as a network? How do they sense their environment? How do they send messages back to parts of themselves? How are those signals then integrated? These are all huge questions which hardly anyone seems to be thinking about. Yet understanding these things is crucial to understanding how fungi do almost everything that they do. We have techniques to do this work, but who is looking at basic fungal biology? Not many people. I think it's a very worrying situation. We haven't put together many of the things we've found into an overall understanding." She laughed. "The field is ripe for picking, but I don't think there are many people out there doing the picking." In 1845, Alexander von Humboldt observed that each step that we make in the more intimate knowledge of nature leads us to the entrance of a new labyrinth. Polyphonic songs like Women Gathering Mushrooms emerge from the entangling of voices. Mycelium emerges from the entangling of hyphae. A sophisticated understanding of mycelium is yet to emerge. We are standing at the entrance to one of the oldest of life's labyrinths.